Ladies and gentlemen, let me just give you the process for this morning. We'll start out, I'll introduce our panelists, and then we'll move into questions, and I have some questions first for our panelists, and then we'll open it up. And as you listen to the dialogue and the discussion up here, I'll also invite you to engage and to participate so that you too can ask your questions of our panelists. As you all know, the trademark of my term as president has been about jobs and about our relationship with the business community. In each of our cities, we rely on our small businesses. If you look at any community, we have a great deal of small business. And so small businesses are also creating more jobs in our communities. And so it is important for us to have this discussion here today. The Conference of Mayors has been active with small business administration and organizations like the International Franchise Association in making sure that financial credit gets to businesses on what we always refer to Main Street. So we're happy that you're here today to help us continue this dialogue and this discussion so that we can get to solutions. At our January winter meeting, we did have a strong panel discussion with the mayors and the CEOs of our large corporations. And we came away with that with 3 things that we were asked to consider and 5 things that we must do. And those 3 things and 5 things are on our website, usmayors.org. And so today, I hope that as a takeaway, we also have some things that not only you do, but we do together to find solutions so that we can grow our economy and become the engine that really restores what America is about, and that is the economy and our capitalist society. So we are truly honored to have 4 distinguished panel members here today. First, we have 2 individuals from the International Franchise Association, the world's oldest and largest organization representing the franchising world. Through its awareness campaign, the IFA promotes the trillions of dollars of economic activity generated by franchising each year. I was honored to participate in their last 2 annual meetings where they held Mayor's Town Hall sessions. So we could discuss with franchise owners the challenges they experience when trying to expand their businesses in cities. Jack, I've come to know you through our past president who had the first relationship with you, and I think he's here, past President Palmer. There he is. And it is through his relationship that we continue to have this, and you have become a good friend as well. But Jack Early here is the chairman of the International Franchise Association, as well as being a managing partner of Early Enterprises and a franchisee of McDonald's restaurant in southern Pennsylvania and southern New Jersey. He has a long history in business development, and franchising is nothing short of a remarkable experience that Jack brings. I've gotten to know Jack over the past couple of years, as I've said earlier, and it's an honor and pleasure that when we talked about this experience in this panel, he was the first who said, yes, let's do it. So thank you, Jack, for being here. And I really appreciate the friendship that is being nurtured. And we also have with us Catherine Munson, also serves as a board member for the IFA, in addition to her job as CEO of Fast Signs International, which helps numerous companies across the nation work through their marketing and visual communication skills. Ms. Munson has a long history in franchising, starting with her early career with Sir Speedy. She then became president and COO of Pip Printing, and now serves as CEO of Fast Signs. She is also an active member of the International Franchise Association. And thank you for being here today, Catherine. It's always good to have another woman on the panel.
My pleasure to be here with you.
Next on the panel, we have George Cloutier, founder and CEO of American Management Services Incorporated, which helps small and mid-sized companies work through financial turnover as well as aiding with profit development. Using just $42,000 of seed capital, he built his company into an organization with more than 150 employees and tens of millions of annual revenue. He also co-founded and serves as chairman of Partner America, a unique public-private partnership between American Management Services and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, focused on developing small and mid-sized business growth in the country's metropolitan area. George, you're a dear friend, and you have been so good in the work that we do, and you always add value. And in planning this meeting, George, you were there from the beginning and giving good insight and counsel on how this experience ought to be. So thank you, George. Last but certainly not least, we have Charlotte Mayor Anthony Fox. Mayor Fox is an active member of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and is the chair of our Small Business and Franchise Task Force. When I talked to Mayor Fox about chairing this, we had a conversation about his passion for small business in his city, and it was appropriate that he take the charge and chair this task force for us. And so, Mayor Fox, it's truly an honor to have you here and thank you for taking the challenge and chairing our small business task force. So again, let me say thank you to all of our four panelists for coming here to talk about issues that are vital to our nation's future, especially in today's economic circumstances. So let's get started. And I have a first question because we're facing the economic conditions that we're in. So what are the conditions under which small businesses would want to hire more workers? Because it is about jobs, and I'm going to jump into that right away. And how can mayors work with business to make these ideal conditions a reality? So I throw that out. Who would like to go first? Jack.
Mayor, if I may, let me start first by thanking you for inviting us here today. This is a privilege on our part to be here, and thank all you mayors for allowing us to participate in your annual event. If I may, the IFA is an association of franchisees, franchisors, and suppliers. You know, as a franchisee, I put franchisees first, but, you know, that's...
As do we, as franchisors, always.
But let me take a moment, if I may, to introduce Steve Caldera, who is our president. Steve, if you'd please stand for a minute. Wayne Weichel, government relations for state and cities. Wayne. And a very important member of our staff, Miriam Brewer, who runs Minority Fran and Vet Fran. I'll talk about that in a minute. Miriam, thank you. You know, as the mayor said, franchising truly does equal jobs. In the U.S., there are 825,000 franchise outlets generating $2.1 trillion in economic output, which is 10% of the U.S. GDP. And it supports nearly 18 million jobs for American workers, 1 out of every 8 jobs in the U.S., constituting almost 12% of overall private sector employment. You know, it's not just about job creation. I want to take a moment, if I could. It's also about providing opportunity. The IFA's Educational Foundation runs 2 highly successful programs designed to expand diversity in the franchising community, called Minority Fran, as well as a program that we call Vet Fran. Minority Fran is a program, it's a one-stop convenient place where minority prospects can explore franchise opportunities from companies actively looking to recruit minority franchisees. The IFA frequently runs one-day franchise opportunity seminars for both women and minorities in cities all across the U.S., helping to expand the pool of franchisees for the franchisors throughout the country. Miriam Brewer runs this program for us. If you have any interest, mayors, in working with us on that program and would like her to come out to your cities, she'd be happy to talk to you. Again, Miriam Brewer is sitting up here in the front. VetFran is a program that we're very excited about. As you all know, we expect to have quite a few veterans hopefully coming home to us this August as things hopefully start to wind down overseas. VetFran was created to assist discharged veterans to become small business owners through franchising. By offering special discounts and support to potential veteran franchisees, over 2,000 veterans have used VetFran program to become entrepreneurs. Over 400 IFA franchisors participate in this program, and it's a program, as I said, that we're really excited about. I know there's some legislation pending in the House that would also benefit franchisees of veterans to become franchisees, I should say. So we're hoping that that legislation gets passed. Also, our educational foundation has distributed over $300,000 in scholarships to minorities and veterans looking to complete their education. You know, the face of franchising is really the face of America. And as the mayor said, it truly is all about jobs, and we see that as jobs, economic development is our major role. You know, you asked about what we can do how do we create more jobs? Well, it's like in any business, you need more consumers. You need an active business to be able to hire more people to make it work financially. But sometimes businesses also take substantial risks in adding more people for future benefits down the road. I can tell you, and maybe brag a little bit if I may, last month McDonald's conducted a national hiring day where we hired over 50,000 people in the US, closer to 60,000. I know in my own company, I hired 62 people. I had well over 1,000 applicants come in this day. It was an amazing day, and but from our perspective, what we're trying to do is say that we as business folks have an active role in trying to fix this whole issue of employment in our country. So this is one example of a company stepping out and trying to create jobs above, quite honestly, the demand for jobs. So, Catherine?
Yes. Is there anything? Tell us more, Catherine, from the franchisor's perspective. And then I'd also like to hear from George, because we mayors want to know, how do we help?
Well, if we're talking about starting new franchises, when someone is thinking about getting in business for themselves, they probably want to be in an area close to where they live. So as they look at different communities, the communities that are more pro-business, easier to open up in, easier to understand the regulations and the compliance issues. If you could just make it easy for us to find out, that business owner to find out the one person to call, to ask all the questions, to know what licenses they need to get, the zoning, all those things, make it easier. That's going to incent them to open in your city rather than a more complex city. Certainly on a more global perspective, tax certainty, regulation certainty, knowing what's going to come in the future is going to help people want to get into business. And right now, as we all know, everybody in this room knows, we're in a period of great uncertainty as to what's going to happen in the economy, with tax issues, with health care and other kinds of mandates. But if we look just at the city perspective, make it easy for that small business person to open their doors, make it easy for them to understand who they need to talk to, what licenses they need to get, where they need to go for zoning, maybe even an ombudsman for a business person to call. I think that would help get new businesses open.
Excellent, because one of the things we're doing in cities right now, most of us are beginning to look at creating apps. And I know in my city, you can now do all of that on the web. and pay your permit on the web, and then you can move on. And then we try to facilitate the enforcement side of things so that the applicant knows when and how to access the inspector. So that's very good. But now, George, I'd like to find out from your perspective, because you talk to a lot of small businesses in our metropolitan area, and you hear the stories from them as they're wanting to either expand. And what are some of the challenges?
I think that one of the clear issues is obviously jobs, and there's obviously a major money issue. The federal government right now is not able to do any more. Most cities don't have a lot of excess funds to invest in small businesses. And the banks, the latest reports are the loans were down from the local banks. I think there are things that can be done about that. Last fall, they put together a program out of Congress, which passed after some wrangling, to put out $30 billion to small businesses across the country, and only $11 billion was picked up by the community banks of that program. They essentially put $29 billion back into the system, so that there's still a very conservative mood in the banking community. And as we've talked about this, we had a chance to talk about it in the fall, is they said, what would I do if I were a mayor? What could I do that doesn't cost a lot of money, that doesn't use a lot of resources? The first thing is, mayors have small business days, but they have them once a year. I'm not being critical of a once-a-year small business day, but they should have them, I think, on a regular building basis, so you build up the concept of a small business day. Have a business loan day. Have a business franchise day. Have it in a casual, informal atmosphere at the mayor's office or at a convenient location. There's too much focus on trying to get 300 people usually in the room. Let's get 20 or 30 who are looking for loans. Another thing is, take advantage of the local banking community. They are conservative, but remember, they're judged also on how many bad loans they make. So they're petrified and always looking for good loans. Why not have a service out of the mayor's office, or once a month get together with 4 or 5 different bankers each month, and put together with small business people who want to get loans or financial capital. But do it every month. I think, and I'm not being critical, believe me, I have a hard time being the mayor of my own house. So I know what you're going through. And there's resources, but there's a lot of volunteers from accounting firms, from banking firms, from insurance firms, from other big companies that would help put these programs together. But do it every Wednesday and make that small business day, and focus on job fairs, whether you know it or not. I mean, people may not be aware of them, are beginning to come back. The economy is not great. The hiring is obviously a problem, but they're beginning to come back after 2 years in the desert. Have a program on hiring, because businesses are still trying to look for the right people. So you have to put the businesses together with the people. You have to put the businesses together with the financial sources. And I don't think we're doing enough of that on a local basis, and it's the one thing a regular small business effective program out of the mayor's office is one thing that you could do with volunteers and not have to have a huge budget dent. I think beyond that, it's going to take a long time, and I think a mayor, in the 11 years I've been at the mayor's conference, I'm always stunned at how hard they work, and I don't mean to give you any more work. Okay? It's probably the lowest per hour job in the nation. So I hate to put more on you, but if you could lever your resources through the banks, through volunteers, to get regular small business programs going to help your own economic development organizations, which of course costs money, and right now money is the scarcest commodity.
Thank you, George. That's a great idea for us mayors to take back. And I don't think when you give us ideas about what we can do to help our small business community and to grow jobs, that that's going to be a difficult thing. Mayor Fox, what do you think?
Well, a couple of things off the top. First of all, Mayor Couts, I want to congratulate you on doing something that I think most mayors should work very hard to do, which is to put the resources online for small business owners so that they know what they're getting into when they're looking at locating in a particular place. And having permitting accessible online is a tremendous benefit because so many of our small businesses complain about not being able to move through the process as efficiently as they can. And it really is true that time is money when it comes to business. Let me back up for a second and make a couple of top-line points. In my city, and probably in most of yours, 90% of our labor force works for small businesses. And actually in the state of North Carolina, 98% of our labor force works for small businesses. So it is an enormously critical sector. What tends to happen with small businesses, though, is that they don't tend to get the concierge service that large firms get, and it's harder to do it because they're so spread out. But truly, when we focus on small businesses, we are focusing on growing jobs. So a couple of things that I would suggest. Number one, do what Mayor Couts has done in Burnsville. Make sure that you get your information for small businesses online. Number two, we've done what George suggested. We have an Access to Capital conference that we do in our city. We bring our banks together. We had 25 banks with 300 small business people this year, matching them together, helping them find the resources. The suggestion that you do it more frequently is a very good suggestion. And I've had good success in bringing my Chamber of Commerce along into that discussion and getting some private sector help to do it. Number three, I think we've got to work a lot harder to promote and reward small business. In other words, do you have a small business person of the year that the mayor hands out that award, or an entrepreneur of the year that the mayor hands out? I mean, just being able to track that would be helpful. And then finally, Mayor Couts, we have started working on an index to measure small business confidence in our city. And we are reaching out to 50 small businesses initially, and we're going to grow the number of businesses that we look out to, but measure the confidence of the small business community. It's harder to do, but it really makes sense because year to year you can see how you're doing.
That's excellent, and I'd like to hear from the others whether they think this is a good tool to measure the confidence of small business. And I'd like for you to answer that, but also then I need to come back and Catherine, you raised it earlier, you know, here's what's happening on the local level, but then there are other issues on the state and national level. And perhaps to take a model that we did with helping with the Small Business Administration, and together your organization, our organization worked very hard on pushing through and helping the administrator, Karen Mills, because she was at the IFA and she was at our leadership meeting to help get that capital flowing again to small business. So if you can just respond to what Mayor Fox had said, and then I'd like to ask a question on those issues that are at a much higher level than what we handle on the practical side, which is getting business going on the ground.
Happy to. I certainly, capital really is, credit access is the fuel that generates jobs, generates economic growth. And I think that the Conference of Mayors and the IFA have worked together very well in several different areas. Also, the IFA in April of this year held a small business lending summit, and there's a handout on your tables, I believe, about that. And it may give you some idea of things that you can do locally in your own cities. But we held a summit where we had bankers, regulators, the administration, some of our elected representatives in Washington get together and brainstorm for a day. And here's what gets me so excited about franchising. Franchising is a way for that individual who wants to be in business for themselves to do it, but not by themselves. They get a proven method of doing business. They get a brand. At the same time, it's going to require hard work and long hours, as in being successful in any business will. But what the bankers like about franchising is it is a proven concept. It has a higher success rate than being independent and going into business by yourself. And so we believe, as we continue to push this access to credit as a major initiative, the #1 initiative for the International Franchise Association, that hopefully we're going to generate more credit. We undertook a study, the IFA and Fran data earlier this year, that shows that there's about a $2 billion shortfall of the credit needed just to fuel the franchise need this year. And if we could get all that credit, that would equal 133,000 new jobs, or in the state of Minnesota, about 2,800 new jobs, or in the state of North Carolina, about 4,100 new jobs. So if we can all work together with the banks, with the SBA, with the government, to find ways to get credit access to our small businesses, that is really going to fuel economic recovery for all of us.
It is about collaborating and working together, isn't it? That is the model for the future. So, Catherine, how about the healthcare legislation? And how is this affecting small business, and what can we do as mayors, again, to use our collaborative model to work together on this particular issue? So talk to us about that.
I have to tell you that as a business person myself, I want to provide great benefits. I want to have great health insurance coverage for every single one of my employees, and every single one of my franchisees do as well. But as costs continue to grow, that sometimes becomes unaffordable. I know that the administration believes that this new health care law is going to lower costs for business owners, but as we have studied for our own franchisees and as the IFA has studied for various other members, that's not what we believe. We know the full impact is not going to take place until 2014. Today, we don't know what the coverage is going to be mandated. We don't know what it's going to cost. So we need to find ways to bring that cost curve down. We need to look at ways to correct the parts of that bill that make it very difficult for employers to forecast their costs, and make it very uncomfortable for them to add new hires today, because we don't know what that's going to cost us in the future. It's a major issue for business.
George, can you comment on that from your experience working with other small businesses in our metropolitan area, please?
We work with probably 100 small businesses every month, from car dealers to restaurants to covering the wide spectrum. And I think the biggest issues in health care are not yet clear, because the state exchanges, which are going to control the kind of programs that are available for health care or mandated in 2014, have not been created yet. And I think, as you pointed out, they haven't defined what the cost should be, what the coverages should be, and I think a lot more has to be done on that. But that said, right now, as an owner, we employ 150 people. We're going to either have to pay a $2,000 per year penalty or cover everybody with insurance. Now, the problem is, I don't know what that insurance is going to cost. And, you know, I'm not the world's brightest guy, but I'm not a total slouch, and I have no clue what it's going to cost. And I think, again, what can a mayor do to help? And I think trying to get more clarification to business owners, because you read comments every month or every day about this program is good for health, and you want to get and a mayor's office or someone affiliated with the mayor's office can do an unbiased view. Obviously, you can't, given your elected office, you can't favor anyone, but you can put some of the options out. And I think education, before we have a knee-jerk reaction to this is a bad health care or it's a good health care. I'm petrified that we don't know, and by the time we find out, there could be some consequences that could have been avoided.
So, Mayor Fox, are you hearing the same thing I'm hearing, that the reason why we're not getting small business to hire more people is the cost of health care is right now a detriment in hiring people, because you don't know what that cost is going to be, because it's an added factor into your bottom line?
Yeah, I have heard the same thing, and actually heard it even before the health care bill was passed. The rate of growth and the cost of health care has been accelerating for a long time, probably the last decade. The rate of growth has been at its fastest. And to be very clear, I think the administration's perspective on this is that it wasn't to reduce the cost, but it was to reduce the rate of growth in the cost. And I think one of the things that the U.S. Conference of Mayors may be able to help with our small business community is doing a side-by-side and trying to help frame the conversation along what was the running average before, what will it be on a small business with this new legislation, and if there are ways that we can tinker with that bill to make it more small business friendly, I think we ought to be looking to help make room for our small businesses to succeed.
Great.
I think it
Jack.
also, if I could just comment a moment on this, as anyone that goes into business, you have to look at your cost to go into business. You have to not ensure, but do your best job to understand what your total costs are. So, one, you can go out to a bank, you can get financing, you're going to have to give that bank projections, but if you don't know all your costs, your bankers are going to be quite concerned that, wow, if this law does pass and it goes this way, that's going to reduce the company's cash flow by this, thus they may not be able to repay the debt, thus I'm not going to extend the loan. So it just keeps going around in circles right now with the uncertainty, and it's creating a lot of decisions that new business folks are just saying, I'm not going to take that risk right at this moment. I don't know what my costs are.
Yes. So let's put in place a new model and use the model that we did when we partnered together in helping the Small Business Administration. Why don't we sit down together, your organization, our organization, and George, and find the way that we can bring something to the administration and to Congress and say, here's how you can do this so that you can give us some definitive direction in how we can look at our cost structures and move forward. Is this something that would be workable? Because I think we have to have a better way of getting this done rather than, as you have said, going round and around and getting nowhere. And that impedes putting people back to work because nobody wants to carry the cost when you don't know what that real cost is going to be. What do you think?
We look forward to that. We would be thrilled to work with you on that. Anytime you put a coalition of all the players together, it makes more sense. Certainly we would have more, hopefully, influence within Congress so they start to understand what these costs are really going to do. And as I said, we really look forward to doing that with you.
Mayor Fox, I think if you can lead that for us, Mr. Cochran, if you can help with this, if we can, and then with Steve from your side, Mr. If we can look at this side by side that you've been talking about, and George, your input is always very good. But I think we have to move on this thing because it's really impeding the health and the economy of our country as we.
Mayor Kotz, whether they do the health care or not, it's not going to sink small businesses. I'm not a big fan of that bill, but it's probably coming. So better to try to modify it, better to try to give it good suggestions, and it may turn out that I totally change my opinion. I think you can't leave people uninsured. It's just not good.
Yes. No,
you know, I mean that. And I'm the original capitalist, you know, but I think that I hate to use such an overworked phrase, but the devil is in the details. And I don't know what health care is going to look like in my company in 2014. I have no clue. I'm not sure that's making me not hire people, but it's making me say, well, geez, if I'm spending $900 a month, and this I hear all the time from most of the owners that we all have employees, they say it all the time, is, well, I don't want to get committed to a health care plan and get it locked down by the bill. So in other words, if you're paying in 2013 $1,000 a month for family care, it might be that you have to keep paying that because what's the standard going to be of payment? And I think the devil is in the details, and there's much political rhetoric on both sides. Oh, this is great, this is terrible, this is great, this is terrible. But you know something? And Tom may never invite me back. You guys may never invite me back. But nobody knows. They really don't have a clue. And I think some pressure on them to get some real numbers in front of the world here would be very helpful in forming a program.
And that's the idea, is how do we move the needle so that we can help you move forward with your business strategies and hiring people. And we all agree, and everybody has said that we want to make sure that we provide good health care to people. We want to all have good health care. The thing is, how do we move to the future and know that you have some definitive way of looking at your financials so that you can make some good decisions in hiring? Mayor Fox.
Well, the only other thing I was going to say is that, I think the conversation is going to be incredibly helpful, because one of the challenges you have with small business, we're not talking about, the 75 companies that, generate, trillions and trillions of dollars. The communication channels within the small business community are very complex, and, I think to some extent, if we can help mitigate the fear that's out there by giving facts, and if there are real issues that need to be dealt with, let's go deal with them. And I'm repeating what the president said in his State of the Union, which was that if there are ways to modify the bill to make it better, he'll be willing to listen, and I would expect him to hold to that.
Very good. Now I'm going to move to our audience and see what questions they have for us, and then I'll come back.
Terrific.
We're at this time now when audience, there's a question from the floor. Yes, please give us your name and your question.
Thank you very much. I'm Afnan Al-Zayani. I come with a delegation from Bahrain. I'm a member of the board of the Chamber of Commerce in Bahrain. I'm very happy to be with you today. I've been listening to the experience in the US. You have been discussing regarding local, state level, and national level. How about international level? Because in our part of the world, there are many young people, and there is the finance for them through like Bahrain Development Bank and Labor Fund and other things. And we want also to have the franchises there. And that's an opportunity for the American market. So please, and we always come and join the franchise. You have a forum or some kind of conference. And more than once, a delegation from Bahrain came. So please look beyond the two oceans on both sides. There are opportunities there, and it will create jobs for Americans as well. I have learned a lot from what you said, the collaboration between the SBA and the different entities, which we have counterparts in our country or similar to them. So can you please tell us how you can reach out to the rest of the world? Thank you. Especially in services, not necessarily food, because we have quite a number of American franchises in food. But like Sir Speedy, like, the other, business services. We are a banking center, we are an insurance center, oil center, and we are a service center as a country in Bahrain. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, let me, if I could start, and then Catherine will add. Yesterday, I just got back from St. Petersburg, Russia, attending the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. It's the Davos of Eastern Europe. And it was all about economic development. It was all about job growth. It was all about what's going on in the various countries throughout the world and what their issues are and needs are. And the issues of credit came up. The issues of credit was a big issue within Russia itself. Their interest rate now in Russia is 20%. Not only can't they get loans, but if they get them, it's 20%, which makes it very, very difficult. My other suggestion would be the World Franchise Council is also available, of which various franchise associations throughout the world are members of. So I'm not really sure if Bahrain has a franchise association. If they don't, the World Franchise Council, the International Franchise Council would be happy to help you set it up.
Okay. Catherine, do you want to add to that?
Earlier this year, the International Franchise Association surveyed its members asking about international development and growth, and 3/4 of our members are growing internationally. We all want to grow outside the United States, and it is a major initiative of ours for the International Franchise Association. Likewise, for Fast Signs, we are aggressively looking for partners in other countries as well.
Okay. George, from your perspective.
I think one of the things is the young people in the Middle East and other countries in that area may want to go into business, but they don't know how. So the first step is, how do I get into business? Obviously, a franchise opportunity, which may be or may not be good for the country to fit into, is great. But also, I think if you could focus your resources on some kind of seminars and education programs for people who want to get into business, because it's a very daunting thing. Well, do I just open outside my front door, and what do I do? What do I buy? How much cost do I have? How do I go recruit people? How do I go recruit customers? Even if I have a restaurant, that may not be something. How do I get more customers into my restaurant? How do I use the internet for my restaurant? So I think between franchising and other sources in this country, and I'm sure internationally, there are many ways you could bring a lot more education. And I don't mean education where you take 6 months and you get a grade at the end and you say, okay, good. I say something you get a month's worth of training, then you go out and do it. So a practical education could be an area that might be helpful to you.
But wouldn't it also be helpful to get back to the local level, because that's where the business will be located? You know, we need to understand their process. Is there a one-stop shop? Is there a way that would help facilitate the implementation of this business on that local level? So I think these are all of the things that our businesses here in America would like to know. It's no different than the discussion that we're having now. How do we facilitate the ease of you expanding your business or bringing a new business into our communities? Mayor Fox.
Well, and there's an interesting tie here between the National Export Initiative and the conversation we're having, because one of the things that we know about the recession that we've just been through is that consumer spending has gone down domestically. So one of the ways we can help our small businesses in our local communities is by giving them pathways to send their goods or services overseas. Now, we in Charlotte, we've done something called Export Charlotte. You could do export whatever your city is, but it's basically trying to coordinate the National Export Initiative with what we're doing, so that we grease the wheels, so to speak, so that a small business owner who has a good product or service can basically plug into this network and put their goods or services anywhere overseas.
Excellent. Other questions? Please, Mayor Marks.
On a local level, there are circumstances where we have small businesses, which are franchises, and local businesses that are locally owned. And should we draw a distinction between those? I have had the circumstance when my locally owned restaurant is competing against a franchise restaurant. And obviously, because of economies of scale, the franchise can do a lot of things and offer lower prices. They complain to me, my locally owned business, and I want my locally owned businesses to thrive as well. Can we draw a distinction, and how do I respond to that locally owned business about franchises that are in my community? And especially in the restaurant area and other areas. What do I say to them in terms of the franchises? And they say the franchises are really running us out of business, and the local owned businesses are not able to thrive because of the franchises. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but I think you may understand what I'm talking about. Locally owned businesses, I want them to thrive because they're in our community, they're locally owned and everything, but they're not franchises.
May I answer that?
Please, Catherine.
There is sometimes a misunderstanding about the franchise business model. The franchisor, like myself, builds the brand, builds the system. We have 475 locations in the U.S. Every single one of them is individually owned and operated. Right. So our location, we have 3 locations in the Baltimore area. Each one is owned by a different individual Baltimore citizen. So while they may have that Fast Signs name across the marquee, they're not owned by a big corporation located in Dallas. And 95% of all franchise locations are individually owned and operated. Jack owns 11, am I right?
7.
7.
I'll take 11.
He wants 11 McDonald's. He owns 7. He owns them. He lives in Philly, and they're all within 50 miles of his location, of where he lives. And so really franchising is that ability for that local individual to get into business for themselves with a national brand, with national buying power, with processes, with training tools and methods for their employees. And it's a way to get into business locally with less risk for that business owner. So it is a local business.
Mayor Fox, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think that when we support local businesses, we're supporting the locally owned individual. We're supporting the franchisee. I think it's a very generic thing. Now, the issue that you raised with the restaurant and buying power, something that I hear from small business owners where I live, and there's some conversations that you can have with those businesses that will help address those issues. For example, in some cities there are co-ops, some buying co-ops that are developed. I'm not sure the city necessarily want to own the co-op, but it could help put the co-op together so that a group of restaurants can experience more buying power by buying things that they buy together as opposed to individually. So there are ways that, again, I think Rahm Emanuel said it exactly right, which is that part of what we do is create the conditions for businesses to grow, and there are lots of ways that we as mayors can do it. But when you help speed up permitting, you're helping to do that for a franchisee as well as for a local business owner. It's the same thing.
And can I add one thing?
Please, Kathy.
Not that you would ever have said this to your franchisor, but sometimes our franchisees say, I can't compete with the independent sign company because I get to pay you royalties and ad fees. So I think it depends which side of the fence you're on, which side the grass looks greener.
Okay. Jack, do you want to jump into this conversation?
I've been a franchisee for 28 years. And, I'm in my community. I support my local Little League. I support the PTA. I support a number of various organizations within my community. So, we are an integral fabric of all the communities that we live in. And the majority of our people that we hire all come from the local community. And in our case, it's just not, we believe that we provide opportunities for the people that work for us. My management team and my 7 restaurants, I have a director of operations, I have 7 general managers. 4 have been with me 28 years, 1 22 years, 3 15 years, and the other's my son. He's been with me 31 years. But, within that local community, my point is that we are providing opportunities for our people.
Okay, please. Yes, Steve. Who has the microphone?
I'm Steve Caldera. I'm the CEO of the International Franchise Association. We're very grateful, Mayor, as you know, for the partnership and Tom's leadership in working together with our respective organizations. One of the points I just want to sort of piggyback on what Jack and Catherine said is that over the past decade, franchising has grown 40% in terms of economic output. And the rate of jobs, we've created jobs faster by 14% non-franchise businesses due to the proven structured scalable model. I think Catherine talked a little bit about the operations support, the marketing support, the training support, leveraging the supply chain efficiencies, if you will. So it really has grown because of the basic model, the proven model. And especially as we've worked through this tough economy this past few years, more people are getting and looking into franchising as a way to control their own destiny. And as Catherine said, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So I just want to throw those figures out there. There's a reason why franchising is growing and is 10% of GDP.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That's good information to have. Anybody else?
Can I?
Yes, please. George.
There's always going to be a dynamic tension between franchises and non-franchise businesses in the same business. Okay, that's part of
The
America.
Yeah.
And it's like when Walmart comes into a town, everybody, or independent chain stores, drugstores, you know, there is room for both. I think that there are advantages to franchises, the buying, maybe the training, but the independent person who's been in the restaurant business, using the restaurants as an easy one, for 10 years or 20 years, knows the local community, the new groupers, upstarts. And what I'm saying is that we can't become a nation of franchisees on one hand. On the other hand, we can't exclude a viable and efficient economic opportunity, which is franchises. So I think it's one of those questions that there's no easy answer. I think it's a great question. How do I resolve this? And the best thing to do as a mayor is as much information you can give to the non-franchisors about buying, technical issues, control over their business, management of their business. The techniques that franchises use are not mystical. They're just disciplined and regular. They are not mystical, they're disciplined and regular. And if you can instill that in some of those businesses, the tension will always be there, but I think they can coexist very viably.
You know, I agree with you, George. And one of the things that I always tell our restaurateurs is that this is about cluster marketing. Because the franchise businesses bring people and drive people there, but sometimes they notice a restaurant that they have not experienced before, and they'll go there because they'd like to experience it. And so it is good cluster marketing practices, and so just use them.
And it's competition and it's choice. And that is what makes America so great, is we have choice, we have competition. That entrepreneur, whether he's independent or whether he's franchised, that innovates, that does a better job, provides a better product, provides better customer service, he's always going to win.
Yes. Any other thoughts before I move? Yes, we have another question from the floor. Please.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Ashley Swearingen, Mayor of Fresno, California, and I first of all want to compliment Mayor Couts and the panelists. This has been a terrific discussion, very much on the ground, and certainly something we talk a lot about in Fresno. We just launched a Dine Local initiative. We've been supporting locally owned businesses for a long time as a major part of our economic development strategy. We debate a little at the local level, you know, franchise versus independence, and I always tell people it's all good. Now, the reality is, when you do dine at an independent, locally owned restaurant, the dollar goes further in the local community. But frankly, if you're spending it at a franchise, it's better than, you know, going somewhere online and shopping. So it's not that any of these choices are bad. It's just a question of that continuum of good. One of the things I would love to see is some of our powerful local or regional brands really have the potential to franchise and become national powerhouses. And I'm curious if the Franchise Association has resources available for those kind of independent businesses that are looking to roll out a franchise model.
Thank you. Great question. Catherine
and we do.
Yes,
and
we do.
And we have folks in our staff in Washington that would be more than happy to talk to a company that was interested. There's seminars that are put on. Certainly, obviously, to go into franchise, and one party you need is that franchise lawyer that's going to help you structure it and certainly give you help in that regard. But that question comes to us often, and we can lead people in the right direction as to folks in their local community that they can go to that will help them from a structure standpoint. Steve?
Yeah, I would say, is this on? Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you went onto our website, franchise.org, there are a couple of different types of documents that would be helpful. One is called an Introduction to Franchising, and then there is a list of questions, Franchising 101, if you will, all about the initial steps, pulling all the way through to becoming a franchisee. So I think if you get on our website, which we've recently revamped, most of the information should be there. And if it's not, Mayor, please call us in D.C. I'll give you my card, and we'll do everything we can to get that information for you. But I think it's there.
Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation and comment. As you know, the census tract shows us that for the first time in 50 years, people are moving back into the cities. And I'm speaking to the new immigrants. And I go to the National Urban League meetings, And I'm talking about the training that the franchises do. And it's no longer like I want to work at McDonald's or I want to work at Popeyes, I want to own one. And this is what the National Urban League and others are talking about. So the training, and I have seen this inside the franchises when they get people together, and you do this all over the country, is remarkable. And sometimes that does not come out. But we see this in the workforce area. There's a hell of a lot of training going on with the franchises, and we really appreciate it, Madam President. Just want to make that observation.
Great. Do we have a link to the Franchise Association's website? On our website?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
because I think that would be helpful, because when our mayors are inquiring about these particular issues, there would be a link.
We are, as you know, we have a partnership. You remember Mayor Palmer started this, and you supported it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mayor Villaraigosa will continue it. We're going to their meetings. They're coming to ours. And we thank you for this partnership, Jack.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the floor?
Not a question.
Please.
Miriam Brewer from the International Franchise Association. As was said, we do a number of one-day franchise opportunity seminars in major cities across the country. While most of the programming does focus on purchasing an existing franchise, we do have a component where, and we work with the different chambers of commerce, that they invite their members, and we do talk about, if you have a current business, what you can do to franchise your business, what steps you need to take. Also, for those who may not want to franchise their business, but they may offer marketing services or accounting services, how that individual can become a supplier to franchising. So these one-day programs don't just focus on how to become a franchise, but looking at all three elements of franchising: the franchisor, the franchisee, and how to become a supplier.
Okay, please. There's a question. We'll take this one and then back there.
Hi, I'm Pete Lewis from Auburn, Washington. One of the things that we see are more and more of our veterans coming back who are disciplined, organized, well-suited to work and own franchises. Yeah. But one of the things that we also know is upon separation, for many of us who are veterans, I know that you know that they were talking to you. I would be willing to bet no one heard a single thing they said. The same applies today. Most of our cities in my area have our own cable channel. Do you have films available that could come out to the cities that we could put on our public TV channels that would show them these opportunities and give them a way to re-engage with you?
Great question. We can put PSAs in place.
I can, speaking on behalf of the IFA, our Vet Friend program is designed to help veterans get into business. We've got 400 members that discount the franchise fee. We're working on a scholarship to help fund getting into business. I don't believe we have any video programming today, but I happen to know we've got a bunch of eager folks on the IFA that if you think there's a place that you would play that on your community cable television, I'm certain that we would find a way. I've just made a commitment for you, Steve, to put together that programming if you would find it of value.
You know, and Mayor, I don't know whether your state has this. In my state, we have Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. And we are a community of Beyond the Yellow Ribbon. And so we have different tools, solutions for our returning vets so that they can access it. And it's a collaboration between us and our citizen volunteers and businesses to help our veterans. And we also are workforce investment agents.
And one area that you all can help in is contacting your congressmen and senators to get this new law passed that will create a financial an incentive for franchisors to provide franchisees, veteran franchisees, a discounted franchise fee. So they can go into business at a much cheaper rate. So this is an important piece of legislation. Steve, what is that bill? Do you have?
There's a microphone coming, and then we have a mayor in the back that also wants to ask a question. So I'm going to be careful with our time here.
So we introduced the bill last year. It's called Help Our Veterans Own Franchise Act. We will be reintroducing it probably in the next month or two. And essentially what it does is it gives a tax credit to the franchisor for offering a reduction in the initial franchise fee for that franchisee. And then the bill also calls for it'll make up the difference for the franchisee, whatever the credit is given by the franchisor. So it's a way to get more veterans, these brave men and women, into franchising. And the reason why they're so successful, we have over 400 companies and 2,100 franchisees involved now, is because they're used to a structure, organization, detail-oriented, and so they do a marvelous job. So this, I think, is another way, Mayor, that we can work with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, because when we reintroduce the bill, I mean, that's a great thing for the mayors to get behind and say, you know, this is a way to take care of these folks that have been working hard for and protecting our country.
Steve, let's make sure that you and Tom talk, and then we can all go together and work and lobby for this bill.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We need to do that. Question in the back.
Thank you. Thank you for this panel, and it's been very insightful and educational for me. I'm Mark Kleinschmidt, the mayor of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And these issues around franchising versus local are very intriguing to me. We're trying very hard now to diversify our retail base, and I believe that franchising has a role. But one of the challenges I have is responding to the criticism that actually is one of the strengths of franchising, which is the purchasing power. When folks talk to me about locally owned businesses, they talk about full economic integration of those businesses. So when our Beard finalist, restaurant is looking for fresh food, they're going to our local farmers market and buying fresh produce, and they are integrating themselves in with the larger economy. It's harder to make that point for franchisers. What is being done, or what can be done to allow franchisees to more fully integrate with our local economies, and for me to be able to create a more welcoming environment for them in Chapel Hill. This goes beyond just the character issues of our community. I mean, forgive me for using McDonald's thing, but why? You still there?
Just went out on you.
See what happens? See what happens? It shuts right off, doesn't it?
Okay. So why stop at Chapel Hill's McDonald's whenever you can go to the Durham McDonald's? Then we try really hard to make sure that we are a different town than everyone else. But essentially, it's that full integration with the local economy that it becomes the biggest criticism. What are you doing to help these franchisees do that more effectively?
Well, let me speak as a franchisee for a moment. I spend a great deal of money within my business communities for services, whether it be my plumber, my electrician, the people that repair all my equipment, the CO2 suppliers. All of these folks are all local. So we are very active within our local communities to provide services for our businesses and spend a great deal of money in doing so. So, and that's part of it. And on the other side, and this is not, most local restaurants are buying from Cisco or one of the other major source suppliers anyways, and quite honestly, they're not necessarily buying all their products locally either. So I'm not sure that really plays out to the degree that we're talking about right now. We do quite a bit of purchasing through our co-ops, and some of the purchasing, you're saying just locally. For instance, here in Baltimore, one of the largest suppliers to McDonald's is located here in Baltimore, that supplies all the buns from Baltimore up to probably up to New York. So yeah, in some areas get a little more in one case, and You know, I've got suppliers in the Philadelphia area that supply meat to wide areas, so not all of it is coming immediately locally. As I said, all the services certainly do. There's no question about that. And that is a substantial piece of what we do. The other point is the local companies that are supplying us all of these products, all of the people that run those companies, all the people that drive those trucks are all local folks as well.
From a sign company standpoint, our franchisees in your community there in North Carolina buy their substrates and their inks from the exact same vendors that the independent does. The benefit that our franchisee would have is we might have negotiated a discount for them, but they're buying from the same local distributor of banner material and substrates and Alumilite and things like that. They're contracting with the same local installers that the independent sign shop would be. They're using the local construction company to build out their store. So certainly on the non-food side, they're buying their materials from the exact same local suppliers as their independent counterparts are, but perhaps we've been able to give them a discount because of our buying power from a regional standpoint.
I'm watching our time and panelists, and to everyone who has asked questions, thank you very much, but I'm going to ask one more question to close us out. Mayor Fox, what makes you most optimistic about our American economy?
Well, it's the people that I see out in my community and even here in Baltimore over the last couple of days. The country is full of very resilient people, and whether it's a veteran who's coming back after service or whether it is a mom and pop who decide they're going to strike out and open a venture, or whether it's an unemployed worker who says they're going to reinvent themselves and open a business, there's nothing that makes me more optimistic than seeing the people who are actually doing it every day. And statistics don't tell you what the power of that is in our country.
Great. George, what makes you most optimistic about the state of our American economy?
I'm kind of in line with Mayor Fox. I think I see mostly small businesses. I come to conferences like this, which see the excitement of the mayors, which are leading their towns. But the small business people, especially over the last 3 years, I have seen hundreds, thousands of small businesses that should have been left for dead. And they've managed to survive it. They somehow have survived it. And I think we should be helping. I'm not sure we have all the right formulas, but I think we should be helping them as much as we can because they're just as big a heroes as anybody else. And those are my heroes. They're up there upside down for $500,000. You know, their credit's been ruined, and they're still going to work every day. And the survival of the fittest, and they are beginning to do better. It's not an easy time, but I think whether they're a franchisee or whether they're a normal small business person, I don't know if that's a good contrast, but a small business person, it just makes you proud to know them.
Oh, thank you. Catherine.
I agree. It's that American resilience, and I would also say that right now we're finally starting to have conversations about the really, really tough things, national debt, government spending, et cetera. And I think that we're getting to understand as a country we've got to work together. We've got to stop being divisive and taking the far polar sides, and we've got to work together on practical things. And I think we're on the verge of something great for this country because of that.
Yes, thank you. Jack.
And right now in franchising, although franchising jobs have been down over the last couple of years, we're projecting a 2.5% increase for this year and a 5% increase in economic output. So we're pretty positive about where franchising is taking our economy and the role franchising plays within the overall U.S. economy. Also, we're really excited about what's been happening with this access to credit. We worked very, very hard on this issue. We brought the right players together. People are talking, and we're starting to see movement. So that one piece really is what's going to be the economic engine for growth in the U.S., and we're pretty excited about that.
Thank you so much for bringing all of the intelligence that you have to this conversation. And I think what is most exciting about our country is people like you and all of us, and what's been mentioned before, the resiliency of the American spirit, because together we can make great things happen. And I like what you said, Catherine, and I think it is about collaboration. It is about putting aside the difference in ideological perspectives and find what is reasonable and common sense for us to make this country greater than what it is now. And I think what we're experiencing right now is a great way for us to shift the paradigm and see new possibilities for all of us. And I think that is the news of the day, is that together we can all make a difference. And we'll be working with you in the future. And let's get to work and get some of these things done on the federal level and on the state level, because you know you have a partner on the local level. And thank you so much for your contributions.
And thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you.
And now, oh, yes.
Big Mac. Drop the mic to the back. Okay? Everybody step forward. Step forward, please. Thank you. Great job. Good panel.
Thanks for having us.
Sir, it's our pleasure.
Hey, take care. Yeah.
So we have the Secretary General coming in. He's here.
Ladies and gentlemen, today is a historic occasion for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. This is the first time that the Secretary General of the United Nations is here to address us at our annual meeting. On January 1st, 2007, Ban Ki-moon, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of the Republic of Korea, became the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. He brought to his new position 37 years of distinguished service in his own government and also on the global stage. His long-standing ties with the United Nations began in 1975, when he worked in the United Nations Division of the Republic of Korea's Foreign Ministry, and then later as the first Secretary of Korea's permanent mission to the United Nations in New York. In 2001 to 2002, the Republic of Korea held the presidency of the UN General Assembly. Mr. Ban facilitated the prompt adoption of the first resolution, which condemned the September 11th terrorist attack. Mr. Ban has also played a leading role in bringing about a landmark agreement to promote peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Mr. Secretary General, we are honored that you are here with us today and extend to you a very warm welcome. Sir.
President Elizabeth Couch, Mayor of Burnsville, Minnesota, and President of U.S. Conference of Mayors, Conference of Mayors Vice President Antonio Villaraigosa, Mayor of Los Angeles, Second Vice President Michael Nutter, Mayor of Philadelphia, CEO and Executive Director Tom Cochran, honorable mayors, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for me as the Secretary General of the United Nations to meet with such distinguished mayors of the United States. In fact, Mayor Villaraigosa of Los Angeles first mentioned about 7 months ago about this very important gathering of mayors when I was visiting Los Angeles. Then I immediately marked my schedule at the time, and thank you very much for your very kind invitation to address you. And thank you to all the fathers and mothers too, who are here today working to make your cities and the world better, safer, and more prosperous for all. When I became Secretary General 4.5 years ago, I did not expect to work so closely with the mayors, heads of state, prime ministers, foreign ministers, or other ministers of business communities. I thought that they were my counterparts, they were my usual constituents. These days, but I realized that wherever I went, wherever I turned, it seems a mayor is there, front and center. When we increased the deployment of police personnel in order to strengthen peacekeeping, to whom did we turn? Your city's finest. 76 U.S. policemen and policewomen are part of our operations from Haiti to Liberia to Sudan. When we tried to break the global deadlock in negotiations on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, who was by our side? The U.S. Conference of Mayors and Mayors for Peace. The cities are not target. Petition campaign has more than 1 million signatures and is now proudly on display at UN headquarters. Do you know how high 1 million signatures just on the sheet of paper? It's very high, this high, 2 sides. And I participate myself in displaying these very moving and very important signatures now on display. And thank you very much for your commitment to adopt the declaration, supporting my 5-point proposals. And as we continue to implement our recently adopted first ever global counterterrorism strategy, whose expertise have we drawn on? Your police, your officials, as your seaports and airports, as well as others on the front lines of keeping people safe. I could go on. Mayors and local governments are central to the United Nations work on development, human rights, as well as rule of law and peace and security. My senior representatives work with you and your counterparts worldwide, all of these areas, every day. One look at the latest issue of your organization's newspaper, US Mayor, shows how many other concerns we share: energy and environment, crime and coexistence, transport, and the toll still being taken by the global recession. In fact, I have been so impressed with the mayors taking part in our work that I appointed a former mayor to be part of my team. Juan Cruz, who served for longer than 10 years as mayor of Barcelona of Spain, is now bringing that dynamism to UN Habitat, whose work I understand is known to you all. For me, the message is clear. The road to future peace and progress runs through the world's cities and towns. Whether home to the 60,000 people over whom you preside, Mayor Couch, or the 630,000 who live here in our great host city, Baltimore, or the millions who fill the streets of Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York. The world's cities are laboratories, crossroads, and magnets, places where innovation is born. Economic dynamos that produce 75% of world economic output. The United Nations wants to work with you even more closely than we do already. Today, I make two appeals to you. First, on energy, climate change, and creating sustainable economies. Let me put it as straightforwardly as I can. The world needs the mayors of the United States to do their part to address our energy and climate change challenges. Your efforts can have an outsized impact. You know the potential catastrophe that lies in store if present situation and present trend continues. Extreme weather, market disruptions, inundated coastlines. 40% of the world's people live within 60 miles of a coast, mostly in big cities and towns. You also know the role of cities in climate change, for good and ill alike. Cities consume more than 2/3 of the world's energy and account for roughly the same percentage of global carbon dioxide emissions. I say this not to point fingers, but rather to point toward solutions, because you are the leaders who have the solutions. The United Nations continues to push for success in climate negotiations. Those talks are moving forward, and we need to sustain this progress. Mayoral delegations were a major presence at Bali, Copenhagen, and Cancun. We need you to be there again later this year in Durban and South Africa. And I thank you very much for all of you who have taken such a strong commitment and leadership to make your respective cities environmentally sustainable and mitigating and adapting to this climate change phenomenon. At the same time, we need you even more on the ground. If we can lead with a national action, if we can prove what is possible locally, we could well give the talks the push they need to succeed. That is where you come in. Cities across the United States are already making great advances towards energy efficiency in transit, infrastructures, and street lights. You are producing and purchasing clean, renewable energy. You have taken this challenge to heart, and you are finding it good for job creation and good for the health and happiness of your citizens. I congratulate those of you, more than 1,000, who have signed the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Protection Agreement, which commits your cities This is a leadership to make your cities clean and environmentally hospitable by reducing carbon emissions below 1990 levels. Former Seattle Mayor Nichols deserves a tremendous credit for his leadership on this initiative. The upgrades and efforts you are making save money and create well-paying local jobs, and they revitalize the economies of the cities where they are implemented. Some of you are involved in the C40 initiative. Mayor Bloomberg of New York, your good colleagues, and of course my mayor, has been at the forefront. He and I are working together on a life-saving campaign to make roads safer and prevent accidents. By doing that, we can save a lot of human lives. Mayor Bloomberg is seeking lessons from what some of the world's largest cities are doing. One of the global allies is Mayor Kadir Topbaş of Istanbul, who is acting as president of United Cities and local governments. I know that he was here with you yesterday. Cities around the world are leading the way. In London, the canal networks are using water and heat exchange technology to provide an alternative to traditional air conditioning. In Wuzhou, China, 99% of the households use solar water heaters, and almost all traffic lights, street lights, and park lights are powered by photovoltaic solar cells. And in Toronto, more than 1,000 concrete slab apartment blocks are undergoing a retrofit to cut greenhouse gas pollution. Let us recall that last year's Shanghai Expo showcased what cities around the world are doing. I was also there. The pavilions gave me a glimpse, an exciting glimpse of sustainable urban design. And let us be clear, we are not talking about the breakthroughs in some distant future. Much of the necessary ingenuity is at our disposal today. And these initiatives forge new industries and claim market share. I'm sure that your cities hear what it takes to join this movement and stay out front instead of having to play catch-up. The smart money is on smart cities, resilient, energy efficient, poised to profit from new, clean, green innovations that will redefine the urban landscape of 21st century. Ladies and gentlemen, my second appeal is to use your influence to advocate for United Nations itself. We are in the midst of big changes in the international landscape, transformations we might not have imagined in our lifetime are happening in the blink of an eye. New economic powers have risen, and new challenges have emerged. Climate change, pandemic disease, human trafficking, food, water, and energy shortages. That underscores our mutual interdependence. No single country, no matter how powerful and resourceful, can solve all of these problems alone. United States is, by any standard, is the strongest, richest, and most powerful, most resourceful country. But United States cannot solve this problem. We have to, and you have to work together with the members of international community. The United Nations is engaged on all these fronts. We strive to make a globalized world function more smoothly. We are addressing the needs of the poor and the most vulnerable, empowering women and responding to disaster. We are facilitating political dialogue, helping to keep the peace in the world's most dangerous areas and preventing armed conflict from erupting in the first place. We are also standing firm for democracy. We did so earlier in Côte d'Ivoire, when the man who was defeated, when the leader was defeated by democratic elections, did not cede his power we stood firm and finally, after 5 months, democratically elected person, opposition leader, was sworn in just 1 month ago. And we have supported the people of Middle East and North Africa in their calls for freedom and participatory democracy. I remain deeply concerned about the situation in Syria and continue to urge President Assad to respond to his people's aspirations with reform, not repression. This is once-in-a-generation opportunity. Many people are oppressed without being able to enjoy their genuine, inalienable right of freedom. And we have to help them. And that is what United Nations are working very closely with international community. United States has been in the forefront, speaking vocally. And I admire the leadership of President Obama. I have been speaking out everywhere. The leaders of the world, leaders of the country, must listen to the voices of their people. Like mayors, you have to listen very carefully and attentively what the challenges and aspirations and what their needs are. I think you are the first line of people who are talking and who are meeting with the people on the ground. Ladies and gentlemen, a better world for all is our common goals. My job is to ensure that the United Nations is up to that challenge, and I cannot do that without your help. That means being a bridge builder, reaching out to partners such as business leaders, civil society leaders. I have been very encouraged by what I have seen in my visits to cities across the United States. Your citizens are engaged. This is borne out by polls that show a large and growing constituency of UN supporters in your cities and towns across the political spectrums. When I first became the Secretary General 4.5 years ago, the reputation and expectation of the United States citizens for the United Nations was very low. I was very much disappointed, and I really wanted to make this organization, United Nations, which is now headquartered in the United States, to be more trustworthy, more effective, and efficient, meeting the expectations of people of the world, not only the citizens of the United States. U.S. is one of the member states of 192 member states, but again, by any standard, U.S. is the most important member state, providing almost 1/5 of support, financial support to the United Nations, and providing all political and support and security and everything. Therefore, I really needed to get confidence and support from the U.S. citizens. That's why I have been traveling many cities. I have visited some of your cities already, and I will continue to do that. I've been trying to reach out to the citizens and trying to explain what United Nations is doing. United Nations, United States share same goals and objectives. That's peace and security, development, and human rights. In that regard, we are same partners. And that is why I'm reaching out to American citizens. That's why, for the first time, maybe in the history of U.S. Mayors Conference, that the Secretary General of the United Nations standing here before you. You understand, and people understand now and appreciate how the United Nations can contribute to the well-being of the world, people of the world, and to the people of your cities. I know many of your cities have active World Affairs Council, lively model UN conferences, and chapters of the United Nations Association. I am pleased to note that many of you know the new executive director of the UNA USA, Patrick Madden, from his previous position as head of the Sister Cities International. He was here yesterday talking to your International Affairs Committee, and he is ready to work with you to deepen our ties. I will also soon be working with the former Deputy Mayor of Philadelphia to press ahead with the UN management and reform. Joseph Torsella has just been confirmed by the US as the US mission's point person on that important mission. Distinguished mayors, ladies and gentlemen, your country, as I have been repeatedly saying, is a key stakeholder and strongest supporter of the United Nations. And I count on your help to ensure that the United States continues to engage and lead on many global challenges facing us. The peace and security all around the world, addressing global challenges like climate change, making this world sustainable, environmentally sustainable, and making this world where all men and women, regardless of their ethnicities, whether big or small, rich or poor, could live in a harmonious world where their human rights are supported and promoted. This is our common goals to make this world better for all. Let us work together to achieve all these very important and noble goals enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. And I thank you for your commitment. I thank you for your leadership. And I wish you all the best to your citizens and to your cities and to you all yourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to make some remarks. Okay. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for recognizing that cities are leading the way in climate change. When the Kyoto Protocol was put in place and our government did not sign that agreement, 141 mayors representing the 141 countries who signed that protocol signed the agreement. And Mr. Secretary General, to this day, over 1,050 mayors have signed the agreement representing 87 million people in our country. And in October of 2009, I traveled to Brussels on behalf of the US Conference of Mayors to work on an agreement between the mayors of America and the mayors of the European Union on the issue of climate protection and energy efficiency. And now we have a memorandum of understanding that we signed. It took us a year to work on it, but it is now signed, and I continue to work with the mayors of the European Union. And in May of 2010, we traveled to China to also work on a memorandum of understanding on energy efficiency and climate protection. So, Mr. Secretary General, we mayors don't wait for the UN or the federal government or a central government to direct us. We do the right thing. We have sustainability plans in place, and we will work with you to protect the planet. We will work with you to have energy efficiency. We will work with you because it's important for the people that we serve. And on the issues of international trade, sir, we continue to work on it. As you have seen, we continue to work with our business community. They live in our cities. They are in our cities. And so with that, what you ask of us are things that we're doing, and it's not a heavy lift. But we need to understand better how you incorporate us into your process, because when we were in Copenhagen for COP15, it was the mayors of the world who stood outside in the cold. And then we were in the city hall in Copenhagen, and we came together and put plans in place to make a difference. So tell us how you will incorporate us into your process so we can help you make the difference that you speak of. We thank you for coming and speaking to us today. It is important because we are now on a global stage and we are here to help. But tell us how you want us to be a part of your process. And before we conclude, it is very important for us to hear from one of our mayors, Mayor Dan MacArthur from St. George, Utah, with a tribute to fathers. Mayor, please come.
All of us have famous fathers. We all follow fathers, and today we think of fathers. And we have a poet, American poet, that wrote a poem I think that is very great. It says, it's Edgar A. Guest wrote, "Follow a famous father," and it goes like this. "I follow a famous father. His honor is mine to wear. He gave me a name that was free from shame, a name he was proud to bear. He lived in the morning sunlight and marched in the ranks of right. He was always true to the best he knew, and the shield that he wore was bright. I follow a famous father, and never a day goes by but I feel that he looks down to me to carry his standards high. He stood to the sternest trials as only a brave man can. Though the way be long, I must never wrong the name of so good a man. I follow a famous father, not known to the printed page, nor written down in the world's renown as a prince of his little age, but never a stain attached to him, and never he stooped to shame. He was bold and brave, and to me he gave the pride of an honest name. I follow a famous father, and him I must keep in mind. Though the way be long, I must never wrong. I follow a famous father, and him I must keep in mind. Though his form is gone, I must carry on the name that he left behind. It was mine on the day he gave it. It shone as a monarch's crown, and as fair to me as it came to me, it must be when I pass it down. I hope we all have a good Father's Day and think of our fathers before they've given us a great day and a great life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What a wonderful poem. Thank you. And this concludes our morning plenary session. Let me tell you, tonight Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake will take us to the Clipper Mill, followed by our traditional gavel passing celebration. And now we are adjourned.